What's up, stock traders? My name is Mike Huddie from Clover Trading, and I think as traders, we can all agree that 2022 has been by no means any walk in the park. We've seen a significant drop off in volume, in liquidity, and general frequency of optimal plays. So the question I pose to you is, what are you doing in the meantime to hone your skills and practice discipline? I want to take you through a process of tracking trades that I've been doing for the past month that is helping me keep a level head and keep me consistently profitable. I want to take you guys through a bit of my month of October 2022. What I've been doing is diligently tracking my trades. I'm tracking what my profit and loss was, what the setup was, any notes and mistakes that I made. I really want to know exactly where there are flaws in my trading and where I am exceeding really well in trading. As I review my last month, I'm looking for some kind of highlight, success, or small win, something positive that happened. And the first thing I want to direct your attention to is GTII. GTII was a stock that we had absolutely go Nova, supernova during the month of October. It's an OTC stock, probably a scam company. Started out with this really nice breakout over the $1.50 area and ran all the way to 9 in a very short amount of time. This is something I would consider my bread and butter pattern. This is the pattern that I originally found consistency within small cap and the OTC markets. I'm generally looking for a stock that goes on a small run and starts to speed up in price action, which is generally what tells me that the end is near. And then that first time it goes red in a number of days after massive extension, I'm generally looking for some kind of entry into strength after the stock has already proved weakness. So to emphasize that point a little bit clearer, let's get into the 2 days of trading. The part of the chart that I'm really curious about is just these, 7 to 8 days until this red day. This red day is the only day I really know how to trade GTII in terms of my pattern recognition ability. So I want to get into this specific red day and talk about how I went about this trade. So in front of us today, we have an intradaily look at the chart, which means I'm seeing this chart across a period of about 20 days on a 5-minute timeline. And what I really want to point out to you guys, the culmination of this pattern, it starts with a stock that's grinding quite well, breaking out and sustaining this uptrend. And when it starts to speed up in price action and move a lot more in a small amount of time, that's the first sign that's indicative of maybe there's a short-term top coming and we're going to have some kind of pullback, some kind of trend reversal. And it's on that trend reversal that I'm trying to find a way to make profit. I'm not shorting this stock and thinking it has to go to zero. I'm just thinking, hey, the stock has gone on a big run and I think it's time for it to take a breather, and if it's going to have downward momentum, I want to be there and involved in the stock for that moment. So generally that day for me is going to be that first time that it's going red, that first time that it's no longer green on the day after a significant run. And that day is going to be this day, which was Tuesday. What I pretty much did was I came to market open and I said, hey, these last couple days of price action have really sped up, and I think that the opportunistic moment is coming very soon. I came to market open and there weren't necessarily shares available at my brokers, something that if you are a short seller, it comes handy to have multiple brokers so you can seize the opportunity when it's there. A number of brokers did have shares at market open, my brokers did not, but within 6 minutes of market open, my brokers did have shares. The only reason I'm really mentioning that is because I would have loved to get some kind of entry into strength this morning, kind of shorting it into the 7s, basing it off the resistance from the previous days on a day that is likely to go red. Unfortunately, I didn't have shares at market open, so I kept slamming the locate monitor, I kept looking for shares, and again, 6 minutes into market open, I did find shares. Unfortunately, GTII was on the way down. I didn't let that really allow me to just say boo-hoo and forget about the play. I stuck with it. I waited for some kind of strength. After it showed me weakness that it was red on the day, I waited for some kind of strength, got my entry here in the 560s, 570s on this ensuing bounce. The idea was risking red-green or the day high, somewhere around those two levels. And really the thesis is, on these first red days on OTC charts, it's very hard for these to recover given certain price action leading up to this moment. So I like to bet on that. I like to think that the odds are in my favor shorting on this day, that pops get sold into, more fade is likely. Pretty much what we got this nice fade after I entered my short down to the 3s. Covered it up, played some of the channel afterwards, and just kind of locked up the day for a nice 8K win. Felt really good about this. This was a very controlled trade. It was a very obvious and blatant pattern, something that I've traded hundreds of times in my career. It felt good for the start of the month, and I'm really excited to see more of these down the line. Actually, right now there are a couple charts setting up as we are in November 2022. GTII was a highlight, a success, a small win, something positive that happened throughout my month. Now, this is going to be the exact opposite of that. This is going to be a challenge that I experienced, something thing that I can use more support with. One of the challenges that I experienced this month was MMTLP. It is a very identical type of idea, daily chart pattern to GTII. We have this OTC stock starting out on a small run, price action starts to speed up, volume starts to come in, and it eventually tops out. Now, the reason this was a challenge for me was this actually ended up being my biggest loss. On one hand, I did really well on GTII and allowed myself to get overly aggressive with the next one that I saw, and I wound up short some fairly big size on this big green candle on 10/12. That was the challenge because that was my biggest loss in terms of my career. The last time I had a big loss on just one ticker was 2017. So on one hand, I'm proud to say that I haven't had a loss of that size in roughly 5 years. On the other hand, I should never really be taking losses anywhere in that ballpark. This was my challenge of the month, and really what the challenge becomes is not necessarily the loss, but how we deal with our losses and what we learn from our losses are what's going to be actually instrumental in our trading moving forward. So on MMTLP, I don't really want to go over how I got short squeezed. I basically, to give you a long story short, had way too much size for the liquidity of this stock and I ended up squeezing myself. But what I did after is what's most important to me, and that's what I want to take you guys through. So again, I'm talking about how I got squeezed on this really big green candle here. I want to talk about the trade that I took the next day and my mindset going into the trade. Again, the challenge that I had to overcome. So I'm now going to change this chart into that intraday chart that we saw with GTII. I'm just going to put it for MMTLP. So again, this is an intraday chart of MMTLP. I'm trying to get a full scope of exactly what's happened over a multitude of days. And in this chart, you can see that this stock, in its run, it had this spike and a grind, spike and a grind, spike and a grind. It was very controlled movements, very consistent price action. And then this last day, this day that I actually got squeezed, you can tell the price action changes from this spiking sideways price action to this all-day uptrend, where the price action gets, again, it's sped up, it's very extended, it's kind of telling me that the end is near. Again, what were the challenges that I faced? The day before was the day I got squeezed. So I'm going to look at these past 2 days because the chart on your left, this intraday, is the day I got squeezed, and then this chart on your right is the next day, and this is where I make back some of the money. What I want to go over is just the challenges that I was presented with. That involves me going over the play just briefly in terms of how I got squeezed. And just to kind of narrate it, I was basically short right at market open on this red candle, expecting it to go red and have this kind of move that we see the next day. And instead, it caught a bid and squeezed out pretty easily on light volume, and I was caught with some pretty decent size in this stock. I started covering as it started spiking against me, and I took my loss, and the next day I kind of said to myself, hey, first challenge, yes, I don't feel good about yesterday. I don't like taking big losses, especially ones that are much bigger than I intended to lose. But am I allowed to let previous battle scars afflict me in future battles? I think one of the more important things as a trader is to not allow your past hangups affect you in the future. Every trade is its own trade. It's one thing to fight a stock all day and try to be right on a stock, but it's a whole nother thing to have one setup and the next day allow what happened on some independent situation to affect you. Right? So I had to kind of get back on the horse and ignore what happened yesterday, but just make sure I trade correctly this day. I size in with respect to risk, specifically to not allow for such a disastrous situation. And I kind of want to avoid the same disaster that happened the day before. And what do I mean by that? Specifically, what I realized is I shorted out of the open the day before, you can see on this candle. Pretty immediately, the stock was breaking highs and squeezing me. So coming into the next day, which is this red candle, the one thing I wanted to make sure I wasn't going to repeat. The definition of insanity is making the same mistake over and over, right? So I wasn't just going to short red green, this red candle out of the gate, because I was scared it was going to make a low and then come back and rip faces off, just like it did the previous day. So I wanted to really wait for signs of weakness before starting to size into a risk level. And that's exactly what I did. I allowed this panic and rebound to kind of come and go. And what had happened right after was very different from the day before. Instead of squeezing the nuts out of me, it pretty much went right back to the lows. Whereas the day before, instead of, making a new high and come right back to the new lows, it just kept consolidating sideways and going higher in very tight ranges. We were no longer practicing that kind of price action. This was kind of wild and volatile and unstable in a lot of ways. So once we had, some kind of double top and a retest of the lows, that's where I started getting interested in lower highs. And I started sizing in the 670s, and we kind of cracked under VWAP and started going sideways under VWAP, and I thought that this death drop was coming. So I started sizing in even harder in the 640s. Again, just allowing myself to wait for weakness and then getting in on some kind of strength, not chasing weakness, not being degenerate and saying I have to get in this play at all costs, because that's what's going to cause me a lot of headaches in the future. So I, took a big loss the day before and I came back and traded it really well the next day, ended up covering into this sped up price action to the downside. Didn't quite make back all the money I lost the previous day, but felt really good about how I came back and traded this setup. And that was a challenge I overcame this last month and something I'm looking forward to improving upon in future months. The last thing I want to impart onto you guys with this video lesson here today, just a quick tip: track your trades. Never underestimate the power of data. Not only having data behind the setups that you're taking, but also how you perform within those setups. I have been tracking my trades for the past couple months now. I'm tracking very basic things: profit and loss. What's the setup? Are there any notes that I need to know about how I traded it? Did I make any mistakes that I can avoid in the future? I want to know as much as I can about my trading so that I know where I'm excelling and I also know where I'm underperforming. This last month, in terms of my short selling statistics, what I've realized is I am not sizing into my winners on the stocks that I am very confident about, that I think I have an increased edge. I'm not taking my full size risk tolerance on those, and therefore I'm not paying myself into dips. So something I really want to look forward to is continually tracking my stats so that I actually know where are the underperformances within my results. And right now I know where they are in my short selling side of things. And in my long bias trades, I also know that I'm over trading. I'm taking way too many entries in order to nail one specific setup. So I have to take it upon myself to either decide, hey, do I take this specific setup out of my repertoire, or do I find ways to increase my edge so that I know for certainty that this is the entry that I want? These are the kind of results I get from tracking trades. It's something that I do with all the guys that I trade with. It's something that's really helped me, again, just understand who I am as a trader. So do your best to, open up an Excel sheet, put in 6 or 7 columns, and really start understanding who you are as a trader. That's it from me, guys. Have a great rest of your day.